Emily, you look absolutely radiant tonight. The voice behind me made my blood freeze. I spun around in the hotel elevator, clutching the anniversary gift I'd spent months planning, a custom watch engraved with the coordinates of where we first met. Standing there with a bouquet of red roses was David's business partner, Jackson. Jackson? What are you doing here? My heart hammered against my ribs. The Grandview Hotel was supposed to be our secret place, where David had promised to meet me for our 3-year anniversary dinner. Jackson's smile faltered as he took in my confusion. I'm here for Vivian's birthday party. David said... He stopped mid-sentence, his face draining of colour. Oh, God. Emily, you don't know, do you? The elevator dinged, 23rd floor. No, what? But even as I asked, my hands were already shaking. The roses in Jackson's hands weren't for me. The private dining room David had reserved for us wasn't for us. Jackson grabbed my arm as the elevator doors slid open. Emily, maybe you should... But I was already walking down the hallway, my heels clicking against marble like a countdown timer. Room 2347. The same number David had texted me this morning, with a heart emoji and, "Can't wait to see you tonight, baby." Through the partially open door, I heard laughter, champagne glasses clinking, and David's voice, warm and intimate. Vivian, close your eyes. I have one more surprise for you. I pushed the door open just as David dropped to one knee. The ring box in his hands caught the candlelight, a brilliant solitaire diamond that must have cost more than my entire year's salary, the same ring I'd favorited on the jewelry website and left open on his laptop by accident 3 times. Vivian Rodriguez. David's voice was thick with emotion I'd been begging to hear directed at me for months. You've turned my whole world upside down in the most beautiful way. Will you marry me? The scream that tore from my throat wasn't human. Every head in the room turned toward me, David's friends, his colleagues, his family. His mother, who'd been calling me like a daughter for 2 years, covered her mouth in horror. His sister, Rebecca, who'd helped me pick out lingerie for tonight, went pale as death. And there was Vivian, 22 years old, glossy black hair cascading over her bare shoulders, wearing a red dress that probably cost more than my rent. She was everything I wasn't, young, exotic, with the kind of effortless beauty that made men walk into lampposts. Emily? David's voice cracked as he slowly rose from his knees, the ring box still clutched in his white-knuckled fist. What are you doing here? What was I doing here? The question hit me like a physical blow. I was supposed to be here. This was supposed to be our night, our anniversary, our future. 3 years, I whispered, and somehow my voice carried across the suddenly silent room. Today is 3 years, David. His face went through a series of expressions. Confusion, realization, then something that might have been guilt if he'd possessed any human decency. Oh, shit, he breathed. Emily, I can explain. Explain! The word came out as a laugh that sounded more like a sob. Explain how you forgot our anniversary to propose to your secretary. Assistant, Vivian corrected, her voice honeyed with fake sweetness. I'm his personal assistant. And honey, if he forgot your little anniversary, maybe that should tell you something about your relationship. The room erupted. David's friends shifted uncomfortably. His mother made a small sound of distress. Rebecca stepped forward like she wanted to say something, then stopped. But all I could see was the way David's hand moved protectively to Vivian's lower back, the way she leaned into him, marking her territory, the way he didn't step away from her to come to me. How long? I asked, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. David couldn't meet my eyes. Emily, please, let's talk about this privately. How long? The shout ripped from my chest and several people jumped. Vivian smiled, slow and cruel. 6 months, maybe 7. Time flies when you're having fun. 6 months. While I was planning our future, picking out engagement rings, talking about wedding venues and baby names, he'd been screwing his 22-year-old assistant. While I was working 60-hour weeks to save for the down payment on the house we toured together, he'd been buying diamonds for another woman. The gift box slipped from my numb fingers, hitting the floor with a soft thud. The custom watch scattered its pieces across the marble, the coordinates of our first date now meaningless fragments of metal and broken dreams. "Emily!" David finally stepped away from Vivian, his hands raised like I was a wild animal he needed to calm. "Let me drive you home. We need to talk." "Talk?" I backed toward the door, my voice rising with each word. "You want to talk now, after 3 years of lies? After making me believe—" My voice broke, and I hated myself for the tears that started falling. "I thought you were going to propose tonight. I thought this was it. I thought I was enough." "You are enough," David said, but the words were empty, meaningless. "This isn't about you not being enough. It's complicated." "It's not complicated." The words exploded from me. "You chose her. You chose someone younger, prettier, more exciting. You chose to throw away 3 years like they meant nothing." I turned to go, but Vivian's voice stopped me cold. "Emily, wait." She stood up gracefully, the diamond engagement ring already glittering on her finger. "I want you to know, it was never personal. David talked about you all the time, how reliable you were, how stable, how maternal. But men need passion, you know? They need mystery and excitement. They need a woman who makes them feel alive." The implication hit me like a slap. Maternal, stable, reliable, all the things I thought were strengths in our relationship, she was twisting into weaknesses, making me sound like his mother instead of his lover. "Vivian, stop," David warned, but his voice lacked conviction. "No, she should know," Vivian continued, her smile sharp as a knife. "David never wanted to marry you, Emily. He told me so himself. He said you were pressuring him, talking about engagement rings and weddings when all he wanted was space to figure out what he really wanted. And what he really wanted was me." The room spun around me. David's face had gone ashen, but he wasn't denying it. He wasn't saying she was wrong, wasn't defending me, wasn't fighting for us. He was letting her destroy me with the truth. "Emily," Rebecca finally found her voice, stepping toward me with tears in her eyes. "I didn't know. None of us knew. David said you two were taking a break." "A break?" The words came out as a whisper. "We weren't on a break. We were planning our future. Just this morning he texted me about—" I stopped, the memory hitting me like a physical blow. This morning's text. "Can't wait to see you tonight, baby. You're going to love your surprise." My surprise. He'd been planning to break up with me tonight. This whole elaborate dinner, the expensive hotel room, it had been his breakup venue. He'd invited me to watch him propose to another woman. "You bastard," I breathed, finally understanding the full scope of his cruelty. "You planned this. You wanted me to see—" David's silence was answer enough. The laughter that bubbled up from my chest was completely unhinged. Everyone in the room took a step back, but I couldn't stop. 3 years of my life wasted on a man who'd orchestrated the most humiliating breakup in history. 3 years of believing I was loved, cherished, valued. "Emily, you're scaring me," Rebecca whispered. I wiped the tears from my cheeks and straightened my shoulders. When I spoke again, my voice was dead calm. "Thank you, Vivian," I said, and everyone looked surprised. "Thank you for showing me exactly who I was dating. And, David," I turned to face him fully, "thank you for the lesson. I'll never make the mistake of trusting someone like you again." I picked up the pieces of the broken watch, the fragments of my shattered dreams, and walked toward the door with my head held high. "Emily, wait!" David called after me. "We can still be friends. You don't have to—" I stopped at the threshold and turned back one last time. The ring on Vivian's finger caught the light like a beacon of everything I'd lost. Friends? I smiled, and from the way David flinched, it must have been terrifying. David, after tonight, you won't even exist to me. The elevator doors closed on the wreckage of my old life. As the numbers counted down, 23, 22, 21, I pulled out my phone with steady hands. I scrolled to David's contact information. 3 years of messages, photos, voicemails, 3 years of good morning beautiful, and can't wait to see you, and love you, babe. My finger hovered over the delete button. Then I heard his voice in my memory. Emily's just so maternal, stable, reliable. I pressed delete. But as the elevator reached the ground floor and the doors slid open to reveal the hotel lobby where this nightmare had begun, I realized something that made my blood run cold. I wasn't sad anymore. I was furious. And David fucking Mitchell had no idea what he'd just unleashed. The rain had started by the time I reached my apartment, each drop hitting my skin like tiny bullets of reality. I stood in my doorway, key trembling in the lock, when I heard my neighbour Mrs. Patterson's door creak open behind me. Emily? Honey, are you all right? You look... Oh my goodness, what happened? I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. My carefully applied makeup had streaked down my cheeks in black rivers. The midnight blue dress I'd bought specifically for tonight clung to my soaked body, like a second skin of humiliation. Anniversary dinner didn't go as planned. I managed, finally getting the key to turn. Mrs. Patterson was 73 and had been widowed for 8 years, but her eyes still held the sharp intelligence of a woman who'd survived her own share of heartbreak. Come here, sweetheart. Before I could protest, she had pulled me into her apartment. The warmth hit me like a wall, and suddenly I was sobbing again. Ugly, gasping sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep in my chest. Sit, she commanded, wrapping an Afghan around my shoulders. Tell me everything. So I did. Every mortifying detail poured out of me. David's proposal to Vivian, the 6-month affair, the way his entire family had watched my humiliation unfold. When I finished, Mrs. Patterson was quiet for a long moment, her weathered hands folded in her lap. That boy, she finally said, is going to regret this for the rest of his life. I laughed bitterly. No, he's not. He's going to marry his beautiful young assistant and forget I ever existed. Emily, look at me. Mrs. Patterson's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. In my 73 years on this earth, I've learned that the universe has a way of balancing things out. But sometimes the universe needs a little help. Something in her tone made me stop crying. What do you mean? She stood and walked to an old oak cabinet, pulling out a photo album. I ever tell you about my first husband? Before Patterson? I shook my head. His name was Robert Chen. No, wait, that's not right. Robert Kingston. Yes, Robert Kingston. She flipped through yellowed pages. Handsome as sin, charming as the devil, left me 3 days before our wedding for his secretary. Said I was too conventional for a man of his ambitions. My heart clenched. I'm so sorry. Don't be, because 6 months later, that secretary cleaned out his bank accounts and ran off to Vegas with his business partner. Robert lost everything, his company, his reputation, his fancy apartment, ended up living in his mother's basement at 35. Mrs. Patterson's smile was razor sharp. And me? I met my Patterson 2 months after Robert left. We had 42 beautiful years together before cancer took him. You think karma will get David? Honey, karma's slow. Sometimes you need to be your own karma. She closed the album with a decisive snap. Now, what do you know about this Vivian girl? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? I mean, what's her weakness? Every person has one. Your David's weakness is clearly his ego. He needed the validation of a younger woman. But what about her? I found myself actually thinking about it. She's ambitious. David mentioned she's been pushing for a promotion, wants to move up from assistant to account executive. And she's vain, always posting on social media, needs constant attention and validation. Social media, you say? Mrs. Patterson's eyes glinted. You know, these days, a person's whole life is on those platforms. Their reputation, their relationships, their career prospects. The implication hung in the air between us. I couldn't, I whispered, but even as I said it, something dark and hungry was unfurling in my chest. Couldn't what? Couldn't protect yourself? Couldn't ensure that the truth comes out? Mrs. Patterson leaned forward. Emily, that girl stood in a room full of people and humiliated you. She twisted the knife after David plunged it in. She wanted to destroy you completely. My phone buzzed. A text from David. Emily, please call me. We need to talk. I never meant for you to find out this way. Mrs. Patterson read it over my shoulder and snorted. He never meant for you to find out at all. He was going to string you along until he figured out how to dump you quietly. Another text. I care about you. You mean a lot to me. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? He cares about me, I said flatly. 3 hours after proposing to someone else, he cares about me. Of course he does. You were his safety net, his backup plan. Mrs. Patterson's voice was gentle but firm. Emily, men like David don't just throw away good women. They keep them on the hook just in case their shiny new toy breaks. The truth of that hit me like a physical blow. All those times he'd been distant or cancelled dates, claiming work stress. All those times he'd been too tired for intimacy, but miraculously perked up when his phone buzzed with what I now realised were texts from Vivian. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a Facebook notification. Someone had tagged me in a photo. My blood turned to ice. It was Rebecca, David's sister. She'd posted a picture from tonight, not of the proposal, thankfully, but of the aftermath. Me, standing in the doorway of that hotel room, my face a mask of devastation, with the caption, when you crash a surprise party and the surprise is on you, #drama, #awkward, sorry Emily. 37 likes already, 12 comments, mostly people asking, OMG, what happened? And, is that Emily from David's work? That bitch, I whispered. Mrs. Patterson peered at the screen. Who posted this? David's sister. She made it look like I crashed their party, like I was some crazy ex-girlfriend stalker. More notifications were flooding in. Someone had shared Rebecca's post. Then, someone else. I watched in real time as my humiliation went viral within David's social circle. Jessica Hartwell. Wait, wasn't Emily David's girlfriend? What's going on? Michael Torres. Dude, this is why you don't date crazy chicks. Amy Richardson. I always thought something was off about her. Remember how she wouldn't shut up about marriage at Jake's wedding? They're making me the villain, I breathed, scrolling through comment after comment, painting me as an unhinged stalker. They're saying I crashed a private party, that I was obsessed with David, My phone rang. David. Mrs. Patterson plucked it from my hands and answered before I could stop her. David Mitchell, you listen to me very carefully, she said in a voice that could freeze hellfire. This is Mrs. Patterson, Emily's neighbour. If you or any member of your family contact this girl again, I will personally ensure that everyone in this city knows exactly what kind of man you are. I could hear David's voice through the speaker, high and panicked, but couldn't make out the words. No, you don't get to explain, Mrs. Patterson continued. You don't get to make this about your feelings or your guilt. You orchestrated a public humiliation, and now your sister is spreading lies about Emily online. Fix it, or I will. She hung up and handed me back my phone. Now, let's talk about what you're going to do next. I don't know what I can do. They've already painted me as the crazy ex. David's successful, popular, connected. You're just what? A marketing director at one of the city's top agencies? A woman who's built her career on understanding how to shape public perception? Mrs. Patterson's eyebrows rose. Emily, you've been playing defense your whole life. Maybe it's time to play offense. Something clicked in my brain. I was a marketing director. I understood branding, reputation management, crisis communication. I knew how to build narratives and destroy them. And I had something David and Vivian didn't think I had. Ammunition. His laptop, I whispered. What about it? David's laptop. He left it at my apartment 2 weeks ago when he came over for dinner. He said he'd pick it up later, but I trailed off, remembering now that he'd seemed eager to leave that night. Claimed he had an early meeting, but his phone had been buzzing with texts the entire evening. Does he know you have it? I shook my head slowly. He probably forgot. He has 3 different computers. Work, personal, his tablet. He was always mixing them up. Mrs. Patterson's smile was positively feral. And I'm guessing a man having an affair might have some interesting files on his personal laptop. My heart started racing. I couldn't look through his private files. That's illegal, isn't it? Honey, it's your apartment, and he abandoned his property there. Besides, you're not planning to steal anything. You're just checking to make sure there's nothing inappropriate on a device that's been in your home. The rationalization was flimsy, but the rage burning in my chest didn't care about ethics anymore. There's something else, I said slowly, pieces falling into place. David's been working on this huge client pitch, the Morrison account. It's worth millions to his firm. The presentation is next week. And if David's personal laptop has what I think it might have. I looked up at Mrs. Patterson, feeling something cold and calculating settle over me like armour. Then I think it's time David learned that when you betray someone who knows all your secrets, those secrets stop being safe. Mrs. Patterson squeezed my hand. There's my girl. Now, let's go get that laptop and see just how much rope David Mitchell has given us to hang him with. David's MacBook sat on my kitchen counter like a silver time bomb. Mrs. Patterson had insisted on staying while I worked, brewing endless cups of tea and muttering increasingly creative curses about worthless men and their wandering eyes. My hand shook as I opened the laptop. The screensaver was a photo of David and me from last Christmas, both of us laughing at something his nephew had said. I looked so happy, so trusting, so completely oblivious to what was coming. The irony wasn't lost on me. Password? Mrs. Patterson asked, peering over my shoulder. I typed in our anniversary date, the one he'd forgotten for another woman. The desktop loaded instantly, cluttered with folders labelled things like Morrison Pitch, Q4 reports, and personal. Start with personal, Mrs. Patterson advised. Men always think they're cleverer than they are. The personal folder contained exactly what I expected, and worse than I'd imagined. Hundreds of photos of Vivian, dating back 7 months, screenshots of their text conversations, videos that made my stomach turn. But it was the document titled Exit Strategy that made my blood freeze. I clicked it open, and David's methodical planning unfolded before me in neat bullet points. Break up with E by March, anniversary timing too obvious. Tell family E and I are taking space to test waters. Move V to client relations role. Justify spending time together professionally. Key talking points for breakup. We want different things. I need time to figure myself out. You deserve someone who can give you what you want. Important. Do not mention V until at least 2 months post-breakup. Timeline, breakup March. Announce V relationship in May, engagement by Christmas. Mrs. Patterson whistled low. He's been planning this for months. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely scroll, but I forced myself to keep reading. There were detailed notes about my emotional reactions to expect and how to handle if E becomes difficult. He'd even calculated the optimal way to divide our shared belongings to minimize drama. He wrote a fucking manual, I whispered, for how to destroy my life with minimal inconvenience to himself. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was the email thread with his lawyer about protecting assets in case of vindictive behaviour from E. David had been preparing for me to go crazy, to seek revenge, to make his life difficult. He'd known exactly how much this would hurt me, and he'd planned for it like a corporate restructure. "Look at this," Mrs. Patterson pointed to another folder labelled Morrison Research. Inside were files that made my marketing director's brain immediately understand the scope of what I was looking at. David had been assigned the Morrison Industries account 3 months ago, a potential $20 million contract for his firm's biggest client acquisition of the year. The presentation was scheduled for Monday morning, and David was the lead presenter. But as I scrolled through his research, timeline, and strategy documents, I realised something that made my pulse quicken with predatory excitement. David hadn't done any of this work himself. Every innovative idea, every market insight, every creative angle in the Morrison pitch had been lifted directly from other sources. Industry reports he'd downloaded illegally from subscription services his company didn't pay for. Strategy framework stolen wholesale from competitor presentations found on SlideShare. Even entire sections of text copied verbatim from marketing blogs and Forbes articles. "He's a plagiarist," I breathed, screenshotting page after page of evidence. "The Morrison pitch is completely stolen. His company is going to present plagiarized work to their biggest potential client." Mrs. Patterson's eyes glinted. "What happens if Morrison finds out?" "David gets fired. His firm loses credibility. Morrison probably takes their business elsewhere." I was already thinking 3 steps ahead, my marketing mind spinning strategies like a slot machine hitting jackpot. But it gets better. Look at this. I'd found David's email drafts, messages he'd written but never sent, preserved in his outbox like a confession waiting to be discovered. And there, in black and white, was the smoking gun. Draft to Vivian Rodriguez. "Baby, I know this Morrison thing is stressing you out, but don't worry about the research sourcing. Nobody checks that shit anyway, and by the time anyone notices where I got the ideas, we'll already have the contract signed. Besides, you did most of the actual work on this pitch. I should really be listing you as co-presenter, but you know how the partners are about proper channels and protocol. After we get engaged, I'll make sure you get the credit you deserve. Trust me, this is going to set us both up for life." Vivian had been David's research assistant on the Morrison account. She'd helped him steal the content, knowing it was plagiarized. They were both complicit in what amounted to corporate fraud. "Mrs. Patterson," I said slowly, "I think I just found the keys to David's entire kingdom." My phone buzzed with another notification. Rebecca had posted again, this time sharing a video someone had secretly recorded at the hotel. It was me, screaming at David, my voice high and hysterical. 3 years! Today is 3 years, David. The caption read, "When your ex shows up at your brother's engagement party and has a complete meltdown, #drama, #yikes forever." 43 likes. 27 comments, all variations of "she's psycho" and "David dodged a bullet." But as I watched the video, I noticed something the amateur cinematographer hadn't intended to capture. In the background, clear as day, was David's laptop bag sitting on a side table. The same laptop bag containing the computer that was currently spilling all his secrets on my kitchen counter. "They have no idea what's coming," I murmured, already formulating my plan. I spent the next hour methodically documenting everything. Screenshots of the plagiarized Morrison pitch, photos of David's exit strategy document, copies of his illegal downloads from paid industry resources, evidence of his plans to manipulate our breakup timeline to avoid looking like the cheater he was. Then, I opened my own laptop and began to work. The first email went to Morrison Industries' executive team, sent from an anonymous Gmail account I created specifically for this purpose. The subject line was simple. Regarding Monday's presentation, urgent ethical concerns. Dear Morrison executive team, I am writing to inform you that the presentation you will receive on Monday from Mitchell & Associates contains significant amounts of plagiarized content. Please see attached documentation showing the original sources of their innovative strategies, including paid research reports downloaded illegally and competitor presentations copied verbatim. Additionally, please note that the primary researcher on this project, Vivian Rodriguez, knowingly participated in this plagiarism. See attached email drafts. I believe you deserve to know the true source of the ideas being presented to you. A concerned industry professional. The second email went to the ethics board of David's professional organisation, with copies of everything. The third went to his company's HR department. But I wasn't done yet. I opened Facebook and began crafting my response to Rebecca's viral humiliation campaign. But instead of defending myself or pleading for understanding, I took a different approach entirely. Rebecca Mitchell, thank you for posting this video of what you're calling my meltdown at your brother's engagement party. I think it's important that people see the full context, so let me clarify a few things. 1. This wasn't David's engagement party. It was his girlfriend Vivian's 23rd birthday party. 2. I wasn't crashing a party. David texted me that morning asking me to meet him at this location to celebrate our 3-year anniversary. 3. The meltdown you're laughing about was me discovering that my boyfriend of 3 years had been cheating on me for 7 months and chose our anniversary to propose to his affair partner. I understand this situation is awkward for David's family, and I don't blame you for wanting to control the narrative. But posting videos of someone discovering they've been betrayed and then mocking their pain for social media entertainment says far more about your character than it does about mine. I wish David and Vivian happiness in their engagement. As for the rest of you, I hope you never experience this kind of betrayal, and if you do, I hope the people who claim to care about you show you more compassion than you've shown me. P.S. David, since I know you're reading this, your laptop is ready for pickup anytime. I've learned everything I needed to learn. I tagged everyone who had commented on Rebecca's original post, ensuring maximum visibility, then set the post to public. Within minutes, the tide started to turn. People who had been mocking me began deleting their comments. New comments appeared expressing sympathy and outrage at David's behaviour. Rebecca's post, which had painted me as a crazy stalker, suddenly looked cruel and heartless in context. My phone started ringing immediately, David calling over and over. I watched it buzz against the kitchen counter and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Mrs. Patterson was reading over my shoulder, cackling with glee. "Oh, honey, this is just the beginning, isn't it?" I smiled, and for the first time in hours, it felt genuine. David always said I was too maternal and stable for him. He wanted passion and excitement. And now he's going to get it. My laptop chimed with a new email notification. Morrison Industries' CEO had responded to my anonymous tip. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We take ethical concerns very seriously and will be conducting a full review before Monday's presentation. David's phone calls had stopped, but now Vivian was calling. Then Rebecca, then David's mother. I turned off my phone and closed both laptops. "What happens now?" Mrs. Patterson asked. I looked out my kitchen window at the city lights twinkling in the distance. Somewhere out there, David was probably just beginning to understand that his carefully orchestrated plan was falling apart. By morning, his professional reputation would be in ruins. His firm would distance themselves from him. Morrison would take their $20 million contract elsewhere. And Vivian, his beautiful young fiancée who'd been so confident about stealing another woman's man, was about to discover what it felt like to be engaged to someone whose career prospects had just evaporated overnight. Now, I said, we see how much David's love is really worth when he has nothing left to offer. I woke up Monday morning to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. The most recent one, sent at 4:47 a.m, was from David. Emily, please. I know you're angry, but you're destroying innocent people. Vivian had nothing to do with the Morrison research. Please call me. Innocent people. I almost laughed. Mrs. Patterson knocked on my door at exactly 7 a.m, carrying coffee and croissants like we were about to watch the world's most satisfying movie. Ready for the show, dear? I'd barely slept, but I'd never felt more awake in my life. More than ready. My phone rang as I was getting dressed. Unknown number. Emily? This is James Morrison, CEO of Morrison Industries. I believe you sent my team some information regarding today's presentation. My heart hammered, but my voice stayed steady. I did. I wanted to thank you personally. We've verified your claims, and frankly, we're appalled. Mitchell and Associates was 30 minutes away from presenting stolen work to us as original strategy. His voice was granite hard with fury. We've cancelled the meeting and terminated our relationship with their firm, effective immediately. I see. I also wanted to offer you something. Your anonymous email demonstrated more ethical integrity and professional insight than anything we've seen from their team. Would you be interested in discussing Morrison's marketing director position? It just opened up. The irony was delicious. David's betrayal had just handed me the career opportunity of a lifetime. Mr. Morrison, I'd be very interested in that conversation. Excellent. My assistant will call you this afternoon. After he hung up, Mrs. Patterson raised her coffee mug in a toast. To Karma working overtime. But the real fireworks were just beginning. At 9:15 a.m, David showed up at my apartment building. I watched from my window as he paced outside like a caged animal, his hair unwashed, his expensive suit wrinkled like he'd slept in it. When he finally worked up the courage to ring my buzzer, I let Mrs. Patterson answer. She doesn't want to see you, came her voice through the intercom. Please, Mrs. Patterson, I just need 5 minutes. My whole life is falling apart. Good. Maybe now you understand how Emily felt Saturday night. I made a mistake, okay? I handled everything wrong. But Emily's destroying my career over a relationship that was already over. I grabbed the intercom. Already over? David, you invited me to dinner Saturday night. You told me you couldn't wait to see me. You let me think we had a future while you were planning to propose to someone else. Emily, please, just let me explain. No. My voice was ice-cold calm. You don't get to explain. You don't get to make this about your feelings or your consequences. You made your choice, David. Now live with it. The Morrison contract is worth $20 million. You've destroyed my entire firm over a breakup. I destroyed nothing. I simply made sure Morrison knew they were about to pay $20 million for stolen work. You destroyed your own firm the moment you decided to commit plagiarism. The silence stretched for nearly a minute before David's voice came back, smaller and more desperate. What do you want? Money? I'll pay you whatever you want. Just, please, call Morrison back. Tell them you made a mistake. Mrs. Patterson's cackle was audible through the intercom. Oh, honey, you still don't get it, do you? Emily doesn't want your money, I said softly. Emily doesn't want anything from you anymore. You're nothing to me now, David. Less than nothing. I heard him break down crying on the sidewalk, but I felt nothing. The man I'd loved for 3 years was gone, if he'd ever existed at all. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Vivian. We need to talk." 20 minutes later, she was at my door. Without the flattering lighting of the hotel restaurant, without David's adoring gaze, Vivian looked younger and more fragile than I remembered. Her diamond engagement ring caught the morning light, but her eyes were red from crying. "You have to stop this," she said without preamble. "David's firm fired him an hour ago. HR called me in for questioning about the Morrison documents. They're saying I could face criminal charges for corporate espionage." I stepped aside to let her in, curious despite myself. "Criminal charges?" "They're saying because I accessed paid research databases under David's login and helped compile the stolen content, I was complicit in fraud." Her voice cracked. "I could go to prison, Emily. I'm 23 years old. I don't even have a college degree. David said he'd take care of everything, that I'd be protected, but now he can't even protect himself. And you want me to... what? Lie to prosecutors to save you?" "I want you to understand that I never meant for any of this to happen." Tears started flowing down her cheeks. "When David and I started, whatever this was, he told me you two were already broken up. He said you were pressuring him about marriage, that you were incompatible, that he'd been trying to figure out how to end things gently. For 6 months you believed we were broken up. He said you were taking time apart, but that you wouldn't accept it was over. He made it sound like you were stalking him, like he was afraid to tell you directly, because you'd go crazy." Vivian's voice dropped to a whisper. "He showed me texts you sent about wanting to talk about your future together, and he made them sound pathetic, desperate." The manipulation was breathtaking in its thoroughness. David hadn't just cheated on me, he had systematically destroyed my reputation with his mistress to justify his betrayal. "So you decided to humiliate me at the hotel to help him get rid of his stalker?" "No, that wasn't... I didn't know you were coming Saturday night. David told me he was going to break up with you Sunday, privately. When you walked in, I panicked. I thought if I was cruel enough, you'd leave and never bother us again." She was sobbing now, mascara streaming down her cheeks. "I thought I was protecting our relationship from a woman who couldn't let go." "Our relationship," I repeated flatly, "built on lies and stolen time." "Emily, please, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm not the villain here. I was 22 when David started pursuing me. He was older, successful, charming. He made me feel special, chosen. He told me he loved me in a way he'd never loved anyone else. The same things he told me." "Yes." Her voice was barely audible. "I found his old text to you in his laptop backup. Emily. He used the exact same words, the same promises, even the same pet names. The revelation should have hurt, but instead it just confirmed what I already knew. David was a predator who used the same playbook on every woman unfortunate enough to trust him." "Vivian," I said gently, "I'm not your enemy. I never was. We both fell for the same lies from the same man." "Then help me," she pleaded. "Tell the prosecutors I didn't know the research was stolen. Say I was just following David's instructions." I studied her tear-streaked face, this girl who'd been so confident and cruel Saturday night. "Were you? Just following instructions?" The silence stretched between us. "The database passwords," I continued. "David's computer shows you logged in with your own credentials multiple times. You downloaded reports, copied competitor presentations, compiled research. You knew exactly what you were doing, Vivian." Her face crumpled. "I needed the job. David promised if I helped him land Morrison, he'd get me promoted to account executive. He said it was just creative sourcing, that everyone in marketing did it. Everyone in marketing does not commit corporate espionage. I know that now, but I was young and stupid and in love with a man who turned out to be a complete sociopath. She grabbed my hands. Emily, he's already thrown me under the bus. His lawyer called this morning, saying David's claiming I acted independently, that he had no knowledge of my unauthorized research methods. He's going to let me go to prison to save himself. The poetic justice was staggering. David, who'd orchestrated my public humiliation, was now abandoning his accomplice to face the consequences alone. What do you want me to do about it? You're the one who sent the information to Morrison. You have all the evidence. You could tell them David was the mastermind, that I was just following orders. I walked to my window and looked down at the street where David had been begging an hour ago. He was gone now, probably meeting with lawyers or desperately trying to salvage his career. Vivian, I said finally, 3 days ago, you stood in a room full of people and told me that men need excitement, that I was too maternal and boring to keep David interested. You twisted the knife after he stabbed me. You wanted me destroyed. I was wrong. I was cruel and wrong, and I'm sorry. You're not sorry you hurt me. You're sorry you got caught. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. That's not true, isn't it? If David's plan had worked, if he'd broken up with me quietly and married you with Morrison's $20 million, would you have given me a second thought? Her silence was answer enough. I turned back to face her. Here's what's going to happen, Vivian. I'm going to tell the prosecutors exactly what I found on David's laptop. Every document, every email, every piece of evidence that shows this was a conspiracy between you and him. They'll decide who bears how much responsibility. Emily, please. But I'll also tell them you were manipulated by an older, more experienced man who used your feelings for him to make you complicit in his crimes. What they do with that information is up to them. It wasn't mercy, exactly. It was justice, tempered with an understanding that we'd both been victims of David's manipulation, even if Vivian had been a willing participant in mine. She left without another word, the engagement ring still glittering on her finger, like a shackle she didn't know how to remove. 6 months later, I was settled into my new office at Morrison Industries, working on campaigns that would legitimately earn the company millions. David had been banned from the marketing industry after pleading guilty to corporate espionage. Vivian received 2 years probation and community service. Her cooperation in the prosecution had kept her out of prison. And sometimes, when I was walking through the city or grabbing coffee, I'd see David. He always looked smaller somehow, diminished. Once he tried to approach me, but I simply looked through him as if he were invisible. Because to me, he was. Mrs. Patterson had been right about one thing. The universe did have a way of balancing things out. Sometimes it just needed a little help from someone who refused to be a victim. As for love, well, that's a story for another day. But I'll say this, when it comes again, and it'll be with someone who knows the difference between loving someone and owning them. Someone who would never, ever forget our anniversary.